Is Nigel Farage racist?
We must call his scheme to round up and deport our French, our Indian, our Caribbean neighbours who already have indefinite leave to remain what it is. It is racist.
Farage is a very dangerous politician. I think he's a racist. I think he's a charlatan.
He would push back on that if he was sitting here.
Well, he'd be entitled to, but from what I've seen, he's convinced me that he's a racist.
So is that why you called him a racist? Why you called Nigel Farage a racist?
Didn't call him a racist. I said the policy was racist, and I'm not calling Reform voters racist.
So to answer this question, let's go all the way back to his school record.
We travelled down to South Devon to talk to Bob Jope, a former English teacher who taught Farage. It's 32 years ago, but in his desk, Bob Jope has evidence. A letter written by a colleague, Chloe Deakin, to the head, the master, summarising staff concerns about Farage.
Another colleague who teaches the boy described his publicly professed racist and neo-fascist views, and he cited a particular incident in which Farage was so offensive to a boy in his set that he had to be removed from the lesson.
It was reported by John Carlin in Al Pais that he told a Jewish pupil Hitler was right.
One Jewish pupil will later recall how Farage would sidle up to him and say Hitler was right and gas them. Fellow pupil Nick Gordon-Brown remembers he looked like a middle-aged man when he was a sixth former. He was a very vocal National Front supporter. There was a Jewish lad at school whom he was horrible to. With Jewish schoolmates, he made no secret of his distaste for them. What you see now is what he was like then.
Yet another colleague described how at a CCF camp, as the cadet call it at the college, Farage and others had marched through a quiet Sussex village very late at night, shouting Hitler youth songs.
Where would Nigel learn Nazi songs like that? Does he still know those Nazi songs? Does he still sing those Nazi songs? We don't know. We're just asking questions. Then have a listen to this.
So he did do that, did he? He did express support for groups like that?
Oh, I think so, yes, among his contemporaries and so on and so on. And probably to some members of staff because he knew it would rile them.
But Bob Jope says some of the things Farage said and did can't have been simply provocative.
For example, the bizarre reference to Hitler youth songs marching through quiet Sussex villages. I'm not quite sure how that's going to tease or torment a teacher back in Dulwich. I mean, if you're performing in that way beyond the confines of the staff you want to torment.
In 2014, Channel 4 catch up with him to ask him questions about his school record. We'll come back to that later. You will notice the counter at the top, and it's basically whenever someone makes a claim or Farage directly says something that's racist. During the 1990s, we find out that Farage is a fan of Enoch Powell and his River of Blood speech, and was even his chauffeur.
This country, in 15 or 20 years' time, the black man will have the whip hand over the white man.
In the 1990s, UKIP founder Alan Skegg complains about Nigel Farage for having used the N-word repeatedly in meetings. Skip to 2014, and here's the interview with Farage.
Yes, of course, I said some ridiculous things that upset
Racist
them.
things?
Not necessarily racist things.
Not
but
necessarily racist. I mean, it's not just that.
I was excluded
Fellow
from class.
pupils remember you making racist comments.
Well, I might have wound some of them up too. But all through...
So you made racist comments to wind people up?
All through the 1970s and 80s.
And later that year, Nigel Farage is caught endorsing Enoch Powell.
Not comprehend. The indigenous population found themselves made strangers in their own country, their wives unable to obtain hospital beds in childbirth, their children unable to obtain school places, their homes and neighbourhoods changed beyond recognition. I mean, you'd agree with that, would you?
In a lot of England, that's true.
And you know where that's from, don't you?
I don't know.
Enoch Powell's Rivers of Blood speech.
Is it?
So-called Rivers of Blood.
Well, what he was warning about was that if you have a large influx of people into an area that change an area beyond recognition, there is tension.
In that same year, Farage becomes joint leader of the Europe and Freedom Party, along with Francesco Speroni of the Lega Nord Party, a far-right group, who defended Anders Breivik, the lunatic from the far right who killed dozens of children.
He described Anders Breivik as someone whose ideas are in defence of Western civilization.
No, he didn't, actually. He didn't. One of his members did, and we kicked him out of the group.
No, you're thinking of Maria Borghesio, who went further and said in a radio interview that Breivik had some excellent ideas. But Speroni himself, who is your co-chair of this group, said that Breivik's ideas are in defence of Western civilization.
And it won't get any better for Nigel, because he goes a bit weird and wackadoodle attacking foreign languages, despite the UK being made up of multiple nations that speak speak different languages, and he seems particularly hateful towards Romanians.
You've mentioned your discomfort at listening to foreign languages on a train recently.
I made the point that I got on a train and went for several stops, and there were a lot of people around me and no one spoke English. And I thought, you know, this is... I didn't say I didn't object to it. I felt slightly uncomfortable. And I think, actually, isn't that the problem? Isn't this, of all the countries in Europe, the most accepting, the most tolerant...
You said, I don't feel very comfortable in that situation. You did say you had a problem.
I didn't feel comfortable, no.
Yes. Your wife is a German speaker.
Well, my children are too, yeah.
Does that make you feel uncomfortable?
No, because they can speak English, and the whole point about
How do you know those people couldn't?
Well, maybe they could, but I got the distinct feeling that it certainly wasn't their language of choice.
And of course, Nigel is forgetting all the other languages that make up the United Kingdom, whether that's Scottish Gaelic, Scots, Welsh, Cornish, as well as all the overseas territories.
And if you look at the primary school situation in the East End of London, you know, where you've now got schools where a majority don't speak English, doesn't that say to us... Doesn't that say to us that what we want is a sensible, balanced immigration policy where we want people with skills to come into Britain, but we also want integration in society.
Of course we do. And the schools you refer to, the pupils you refer to, are registered and recorded as having English as a second language. They're not registered and recorded as not being able to speak English. That's precisely that sort
and
of...
some of both.
Well, yes, but no one's counted them, so your own children would fit into that category.
Well, hopefully, lots of people can speak different languages, but the point I'm making is, do we want to live in an integrated society?
No, forgive me. The point you're making is that schools in the East End are full of children who can't speak English. I just want you to recognise that's not true, what you just said.
Come from
the children who are typified as speaking English as a second language would include your own daughters. Their mother tongue being German.
They come from homes where English is most definitely not the first language, and in too many cases is not the language at all. Now look, you know,
but no one's counted how many people are in the second category.
And it would be a very helpful and useful thing if they did, and perhaps we'd be even more surprised and even more shocked. But the argument...
Or perhaps we'd realise that most bilingual children in this country are children like yours.
He's literally complaining about people speaking foreign languages in a country made up of foreign languages.
But what the caller asked you was why so many people think you're racist.
Yeah, well, I think, you know, yes, we've had our idiots.
And part of the answer would be, you talk about children who can't speak English as a first language without mentioning it includes your own children.
I mean, what is racism? You know, is racism between races? I mean, I was talking about.
Don't you know? How can you say you're not something if you don't know what it is?
I mean, is race about colour? Is race about race, or is it about nationality? You know, I made a comment there that wasn't intended to say any more that I felt uncomfortable about the rate and pace of change and numbers of people.
No, you felt uncomfortable about people speaking foreign languages, despite the fact that presumably your own wife does when she phones home to Germany.
Yeah, I don't suppose she speaks it on the train, you know.
Why not? Is she not allowed to? Can't she speak German wherever she wants? And what about the line about not wanting to live next door to Romanians? It's perfectly acceptable for people not to want to...
I was asked, if a group of Romanian men moved in next door to you, would you be concerned?
What about if a group of German children did? What's the difference?
The difference, and you know what the difference is.
No, I honestly don't. This is, I think, where the disconnect is between your position and mine. What is the difference?
Since the fall of communism, what has happened to the Roma communities in those countries? They don't get jobs, they get nowhere to live, and they have been forced, in many cases, to a life of crime. And what has happened with an open door is it's been an open invitation for the traffickers. Now, we all know this is going on.
Okay.
The Metropolitan Police...
Trafficking is a crime, of course.
Trafficking is a crime.
And trafficked people are victims of crime.
Yes, and the Metropolitan Police have produced their crime statistics, and they're eye-watering, and I'm saying, let's get a grip on it.
I know you're saying that about Romanians, but why can't you understand how many people feel troubled that you're also talking about them? 32 million people are looking for jobs in Europe, and that big clunking fist pointing, saying that they're coming...
That was a provocative poster.
They're coming for your job. That frightens people. People who are already here working. People who my children go to school with. Their parents are troubled by the idea that they're now being demonised and typified. And you gloss so smoothly and so slickly over demonising Romanians and demonising Germans.
I'm not demonising anybody.
But you just asked you a question about Romanians and you started talking about people traffickers.
I'm demonising.
And there's still more because he tries to defend using slurs against Chinese people.
You know, we can pretend if we like.
So if you're from the council...
Well, hang on a second.
You say kufta, do you?
No. If you and your mates are going out for a Chinese, what do you say you're going for?
I honestly would not use the word chinky. Would you?
A lot of people would.
Would you?
No.
And into 2015, he starts attacking foreigners who have HIV.
Other people who will be mortified that I dare to talk about it. There are 7,000 diagnoses in this country every year for people who are HIV positive, which is not a good place for any of them to be, I know. But 60% of them are not British nationals. You can come into Britain from anywhere in the world and get diagnosed with HIV and get the retroviral drugs that cost up to £25,000 per year per patient.
This kind of scaremongering
No, it's a fact.
rhetoric is dangerous.
It's a fact.
It's dangerous, it divides
Well, it's
communities
true.
and it creates stigma to people who are ill, and I think you ought to be ashamed of yourself.
When somebody is diagnosed with a dreadful illness, my instinct is to view them as a human being, not consider what country they come from.
2016, in days before the Brexit referendum, Farage unveils a racist poster, and it draws instant parallels with films and propaganda from Nazi Germany. And in the same year, he attacks Obama and calls him a creature.
That Obama creature said, you know, I mean, loathsome individual.
2017, and he's now endorsed by David Duke, the former head of the KKK. And later that year, a little girl tells Nigel he is...
My mummy says you hate foreigners.
No, little girl. No.
2017, and he flies over to Germany to meet the AfD, a very extreme far-right group, and he receives a standing ovation. And in that same year, he makes anti-Semitic remarks.
There are about 6 million Jewish people living in America, so as a percentage it's quite small, but in terms of influence, it's quite big.
People were so enraged they tried to get Nigel off the air. But interestingly, Eric Cartman said the same thing.
Mr. Cartman, did you or did you not tell students at this school that Kyle runs Hollywood?
I think I did say that, yes. I'm sorry, why is it so offensive to say who runs Hollywood? People like Hollywood. Hollywood's cute. The Jews should be honored to be in charge of it.
2020, and Farage describes Black Lives Matter as a new form of Taliban. And in 2023, Farage gets onto I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. He gets in a confrontation with Nella Rose, and it's explosive.
But to chuck around accusations the way that they've been chucked around is grossly unfair. Anti-immigrant, right? No, all I've said is we cannot go on with the numbers coming to Britain that are coming. Do you know why?
I'm one of the numbers!
Oh, right, so that's it then. So should it be 5 million a year, 10 million?
Question,
No,
right?
you don't seem to understand.
Nigel, hang on.
There's immigrants that are coming in.
And hang on.
Had you have been in power a bit
What's
later...
so wrong about immigrants?
Listen, since 2000, the British population has increased by 10 million. 10 million.
Yeah, we're growing.
Right?
Good thing, unless you want a GP appointment.
Right.
Good thing,
Okay,
unless you want your
So
kid.
I'm stopping you from getting a GP appointment. You're not getting an appointment because the NHS is lacking funding. I bet you anything here, if every single immigrant or somebody from immigrant descent was to leave the UK...
We'd be
Huh? Doctors, all your doctors,
Nurses.
gone.
Oh, I know.
Most of your doctors are Asian, right?
Which is
most of
wrong.
your nurses are African women, right?
Don't you understand what I'm saying?
You want us gone. That's all I understood.
Stop it. Stop it.
That's what you're trying to say because we're overcomplicating.
You just don't want more people coming. Is that what you're trying to say?
You're not listening
Why not?
to a single word I'm saying.
I am listening to you.
No, you're not. You're not. You're dealing with this
I'm
out of a
disagreeing
position.
with you.
But here's a bigger flip around. Here's Nigel defending the fact that he hired his wife to do a British person's job.
You've warned about Europeans taking British jobs. Your wife is German. She's your secretary.
Yes.
She's paid for by the British taxpayer.
She came here as a highly skilled person, earning a high salary, paying a very large amount of tax. It all goes to show. Nobody must think.
Was your wife taking someone else's job?
No, because I don't think anybody else would want to be in my house at midnight, going through emails and going to be briefed for the...
In 2023, Nigel Farage has a complete meltdown because he's banned from the bank Coots. However, there's a reason.
An internal Coots report on Farage states, at best he is seen as xenophobic and pandering to racists, and at worst he is seen as xenophobic and racist. He is considered by many to be a disingenuous grifter.
2024, and Nigel Farage suggests that Rishi Sunak doesn't get, quote, our culture, despite Rishi being born in Britain and Prime Minister of the UK.
He doesn't really care about our history. He doesn't really care, frankly, about our culture. He cares about staying in number 10.
He claimed no one speaks English in Oldham anymore in 2024. And then he attacked Kamala Harris by suggesting she wasn't American.
The Democrat Party getting rid of a black African woman, I just cannot see it.
That he believes immigrants are eating people's cats and dogs in Ohio. Is he onto something?
Whenever he says something like this that sounds absolutely crackers, in the end, there always proves to be some truth in it.
Except that's not true. Most of the stuff that comes out of Donald Trump's mouth is a lie, and we know that because it's been statistically analysed for years. It's almost 1 to 3 lies a day out of Donald Trump's mouth.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there.
You think Haitian immigrants are eating cats and dogs?
I'll have a tenner with you that within the next month or so we find some evidence of it. What the scale of it is, I've no idea.
But you do think some cats and dogs are being eaten in Springfield, Ohio?
I think Trump generally, when he says these things, is proved to be right.
That summer we also had the issue of the riots, known to some as the Farage riots, because essentially he stoked the flames.
One of the reasons the Southport riots were as bad as they were is we weren't told the truth. There were stories online from some very prominent folks with big followings, Andrew Tate, etc.
You know, the normal thing here would be to keep your mouth shut, but Nigel, being Nigel, decides to fan the flames. He thinks that some foreigner is involved, and so therefore it's okay to start complaining about it, even though his only source is a sexist, rapist lunatic. We get into 2025, and not for the first time, Nigel Farage is pictured with far-right activists who posted pride swastikas and made racist rants. And the racist madness continues because Nigel doesn't seem to have learnt lessons from the Farage riots. No, now it's taxi drivers he's getting his information from.
I've met taxi drivers that have told me that. I've met taxi drivers that have told me, we will have Sharia law in Britain, you will live by our rules.
And it doesn't end there because he goes full Donald Trump.
They're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats.
Swans were being eaten in royal parks in this country, that carp were being taken out of ponds and eaten in this country by people who come from cultures that have a different... Would you agree it's happening here? Neither of us can prove or disprove.
Who are taking the carp and the swans?
People who come from countries where that's quite acceptable to do so.
Well, I've read headlines that it's Eastern Europeans, Romanians and people like that.
So I believe.
Back to attacking Romanians again, and... I'll be clear, there was no evidence about the cats or the swans. In fact, there was contrary evidence to that from different groups that said there was no evidence of that. Yet Nigel made a bet with Nick Ferrari, and was he going to honour that bet that he was wrong about Trump? No, he was going to double down.
If you can prove it, I've got my £10 ready.
Well, if you can prove it hasn't happened, that other way around.
Are you prepared now to say that that one was utterly nonsensical?
If I said to you that swans were being eaten in royal parks in this country, that carp were being taken out of ponds and eaten in this country by people who come from cultures that have a different... Would you agree it's happening here?
I've certainly read... I didn't know about swans, I've read about carp being fished,
well, there you go. So, look, you know, neither of us can prove or disprove.
Who are taking the carp and the swans?
People who come from countries where that's quite acceptable to do so.
Well, I've read headlines that it's Eastern Europeans, Romanians and people like that.
So I believe.
Is that what you've heard?
So I believe.
So it's a similar sort of story. They're eating
similar story.
They're eating our carp, they're eating our swans.
But, you know, I'm not saying that. I'm just putting it back as an argument.
All right, I don't get my £10?
Well, I should get my £10 because you can't prove the other way either.
So my final tally is 36 racist comments, not 1 or 2 gaffes. It's a lifetime achievement award in bigotry. What he's done is manufactured fear over decades, and you can learn more about how politicians and other groups have manufactured fear in the past and present in my book Manufactured Fear, available on Amazon. And finally, just this very interesting commentary from almost 10 years ago from Michael Crick on Nigel Farage then and now.
It's also interesting, looking into Farage's background, how many people say that the Farage of 30 years ago at Dulwich College was just like the Farage you have today, the cheeky chappy, the guy who always dressed smartly, polished shoes, who enjoyed life, enjoyed winding people up, enjoyed being provocative. And so there is, in many ways, he was the man of 30 years ago. The question is, where is politics now, the politics of then?
Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you'd like to help the channel for free, hit that like and subscribe button. And be sure to share this video with anyone who has any doubts about Nigel Farage being racist. Once again, I'd like to say a big thank you to all of my Patreon and YouTube subscribers who keep this channel going and growing. I really appreciate your support. Once again, thanks for listening. Bye for now.